that's the kind of stuff that my father endured. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and so he was bad. My grandfather. Well, he beat my father so bad he banged his head against those cast iron radiators, and it almost killed him. Hey, everybody out there in TV land. This is Joe Barone from the Goodfellow Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we really appreciate it. And guys, don't forget about the Patreon. Subscribe. I got a couple of little stories there that I don't really want to air on air, and as you know, like now. Anyways, really appreciate it. I also, before I get started, I want to apologize for not bringing up. I wasn't consistent in my in the podcast because I had something going on. My technical advisor has something going on, so we couldn't really do anything. But anybody who was waiting around for that, I just want to apologize. We try to get it out every Monday as we can, but sometimes things come up, and life is life. Anyway, we're okay now, and I was told that from a lot of people who subscribed and a lot of comments, they wanted to know some stuff about my father. And I would really appreciate that. I just want to say thank you for asking about him. I also did in this book from Larry McShane, who is actually, he works for the Daily News. There's a few pages I gave him some stuff about my dad and stuff that I did. So if you guys want to get that, that's about the chin. I'll show it to you guys one more time. It's probably on Amazon and stuff like that. He's a really good writer and a really good friend. Anyways, so my father, when he was young, he got started. I call him my uncle. I think I mentioned him before. His Patty. They used to run. They had number stores, and he could have been a wise guy back in those days too. But he was related to us, and out of respect, I called him uncle. My grandfather was very worried about my father. Back in those days, my father, well, if you want to laugh, he's the middle child. And they always say the middle child always has the hardest time because the oldest one is the oldest one, and then there's the baby, and then there's the middle one always takes all the brunt of everything. And that really was true about my father. My father actually came home really late at night. My grandfather was waiting for him. And I'm going to show you the barbaric and how things were back in those days, especially in Italian families. They were very hard. Okay, so my father come in, he snuck in the house and everything, and he thought he was okay. He went to sleep. My grandfather waited till he was asleep. And my Uncle Charles, who was the youngest one, told me about this. And he was in the bunk bed, and he saw my grandfather come in. My grandfather put his fist right under my father's chin, and he just hit him while he was asleep.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that's the kind of stuff that my father endured. My grandfather was an alcoholic, and so he was bad. My grandfather. Well, he beat my father so bad he banged his head against those cast iron radiators, and it almost killed him. So my father endured a lot of stuff, and I'm not making any excuses, but in today's world, that would be definitely called child abuse. And hold on.
How old was your dad when he did that?
Probably like a teenager, young, early teens, probably 12 years old.
Terrible.
Yeah, 15, 18. My grandfather was brutal, but also my great-grandfather was brutal. My great-grandfather, I had a picture of him. I wish I could have showed it to you. He wore all black, and he had a look. And if you could look at all the old pictures back in those days, they always looked mean, these people. They always looked unhappy. Nobody was ever smiling in these pictures. They're all like, I was like, why are you so mean? Like, you know what I mean? But my great-grandfather, which was my father's grandfather's father, used to sit there with a jug of wine outside. And all the Muscovy ducks that would come over there, he would take rocks and he'd hit them in the neck and break their necks. They were. It was a different world, different time. But I'm only setting this up because I want you to see where my father come from and how he was and why he was the way he was. And I think in one way, my mother, she had talked to me, and she always said that she had felt sorry for my father. And I think that's another reason why my mother told me, don't fall in love with somebody because you feel sorry for them. But my father was running around wild back in those days. My grandfather was scared that he was probably going to get killed. So he grabbed my Uncle Pat and he asked him to take him under his wing. Well, sure enough, he did. So my uncle was, like I said, he had the number stores. They had card games back in those days. So my father learned how to do the stuff at the card games, like you've probably seen these episodes if anybody watched The Sopranos or Goodfellows. My father was like that kind of guy. He would get the sandwiches or, watch the card games and get them and stuff like that. And then he count the money. And, my uncle took him under his wing. That's really what it was. And so my cousin George Patty, who, and both of these people who I'm talking about, or actually all three of them, my father and George and uncle, they died. They passed away now. And my Aunt Camilla, my Uncle Pat's wife. Guys, if I could tell you, these people, it's hard to relate. It's hard to say and show you the feelings because things were so different back then than compared to today. There was none of these cell phones and computers and all of that stuff. It was a different world, Well, it's just that you have to kind of be in it, and I'll try my best to really elaborate on it to show you. But anyway, so my father started learning that way. Learned how to. He knew, of course, learned how to play pinochle, which nobody even probably even heard of that now. And he knew all about the card games. Then he started collecting money. My uncle showed him how to loan shark and do all of that stuff, how to take the numbers. And so when you do all of that stuff, now you're around, people see you and they're watching you. Like Sammy the Bull will probably tell you how he got started doing things in the street. People saw him, people looked at him. I'm sure Michael Francis will tell you the same thing. Of course, my dear friend Dominic Sicali from Mafia Roundtable, he'll tell you the same thing. People people notice you or hear things about you, and then they watch you, you know what I mean, and see how you handle things. Well, my father did the same thing, and my cousin George told me this story. Not even my father. They were leaving a card game one time, and they had the money with them and everything. So now you guys might not be familiar with the Cross County Parkway. Okay, that's in Yonkers, and it connects to the Hutch. It connects to all the different places, to the Bronx River, all of these places. They were being followed by these guys. They wouldn't get robbed. Well, there was my uncle and my cousin George and everything. They were all in the car, and my father's driving. And this is how I learned how to drive, too. And I'll tell you about that in a second. Well, these guys, they chasing, and my father notices them. Well, my cousin George showed me the road on the Cross County where it was. And I can't explain it to you any better than what it really is. There was a divider here where you could go stay on the Cross County, or you can get off over here on the Sprain, and then you can go to a Jonkers and everything. Well, there was a thing. He made my father actually made them catch up, like they think they was like tailgating them. My father made a turn so fast that they kept going straight. They hit the guardrail.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, just like the movies. I swear to God. And I've done stuff like that in the car too, like that too. I'll tell you about that in a second. Hold on a second. I'm sorry I get teary-eyed when I talk about my father and all these people, because I miss them. And when you're around people like this and you have these good stories, it does affect you. So I apologize for a second, but thank you. I appreciate you guys understanding. But anyway, so my cousin George showed me this, and I was like, really? And it makes you feel so good when you hear stories about your father like that, and especially somebody who was right there with them. You know what I mean? But that's how my father got started. Well, there was another story that they told me. My Uncle Pat told me. He says, so he started collecting money, my father. And he was very violent, my father, as you could probably well imagine, because if you heard the stories I just told in the beginning, now you know why he was violent. So my Uncle Pat gave him the guy's name, said, listen, go over there and don't take no for an answer, Joe. Get me, get the money. Well, my Uncle Pat didn't really mean to have my father put him in the hospital, but my father beat the guy so bad he almost killed him. And he put him in the hospital. So my Uncle Pat said to him, Joseph, I didn't tell you to try to kill me. He says, I get the money, but, So he said, well, you told me to, don't take no for an answer. But you see, that's the kind of guy my father was. He was serious. He wanted to get known, and that was it. Well, anyways, that's one story about my father. I'll tell you more about that later on. More stories about him in this video. But my father became a hairdresser. He went to school. He became a hairdresser. He owned a place called Chris Cindy's in Larchmont, and it was one of the most. It was voted the most popular place in the '60s. Now I was a little boy, and my father would take me there, with him, and I would sweep up but the broom was so much bigger than me because I was a little kid. I would fix the magazines. He'd give me like $1 bill. It was a lot of money, $1 bill in the '60s. You know what I mean? I was only like 4 years old or whatever I was, and we used to go to this place. They had the best hamburgers. They had those nice sour pickles. I remember that to this day, believe it or not. It's funny with my PTSD. I remember stuff long ago in the past, but not now. You know what I mean? I could forget if I wash my hair. Sometimes I wash it twice. But anyway, he liked it, but he also hated it because it was. Listen, it was work. But my father started going around, and he started still doing things, and he was doing his own loan shark, and he was doing his own numbers. He was doing a lot of different things. And I had talked about it once before where he had borrowed money. Sometimes things were bad. And anyways, he wound up giving up he had a partner named Louis Bastone. Louis Bastone was I liked Louis. I liked his son, Louis. And Louis Bastone also owned Pasta in the Bronx on Williamsbridge Road, right next to Murray Richmond's building. And they were good partners. I think Lewis used to be a hairdresser too, and then they had another guy that used to do the hair color, and I forget his name. But they were really good, but they gave it up later on, and my father went his own direction. And I have pictures of my father where he used to actually hijack trucks, Macy's trucks. And then he'd get dressed up in this kind of almost like a jumpsuit. And I said, "Where you going to work?" And he said, "Where you going, Daddy?" He said, "I'm going to work." And so he would do all those kind of things. So he was actually hijacking trucks on his own. He had a guy that would take the swag, the swag and all of that stuff, which was all the merchandise. Swag means the merchandise and stuff like that. But he was that kind of guy. But he also was. He did anything for what was $1. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid. And I knew the people next door, but I knew the guy had jewelry in his place. I actually climbed through the guy's window. I stole jewelry. I was about maybe 16 years old, maybe 17 years old, something like that. And I took all the jewelry and I gave it to my father. He never asked me where I got it. He never asked me what I did. He took the jewelry, he looked at it, he gave me some money, and that was it. And that's the kind of guy my father was. We never talked about it ever again. Ever again. He never asked me what I did or how'd I do it or be careful or anything like this. You know what I'm saying?
It was just the street code. You don't talk about it.
Yeah.
That, right?
Yeah. You see, and like a lot of people don't realize, that's what I miss. That's why I was so close to Dominic. Too. You guys, as you guys know, I'm very dear friends with Dominic Sicali. We could do something, Dominic and I. I'll put it to you this way. Let's just like I did with this thing. And Dominic and I will never talk about it ever again. You understand what I'm saying to you? Him and I will know we always have that secret between us. But we'll never talk about it again. And there's something powerful in that, but there's something that makes you so close like that. You really get close to somebody like that because it's something you share, but it's something that benefited you both. Now, my father, what he did with the jewelry and everything like that, I don't know. He probably sold it. He probably melted it down. I don't know what he did with it, but that's the way my father was. Just like I told you guys maybe a story years ago when my father, I had like $30 in a single. I think I might have mentioned this in one of our other podcasts, where, and I used to hear my father when he used to win playing the numbers, because I told you my father, unfortunately back in those days, my father was a degenerate gambler, and he probably lost, well, I thought it was $1 million. My cousin George told me he probably lost more than that.
Wow.
Gambling. Yeah. $1 million, let me tell you something, $1 million ain't bad now if you're right around my age. If you got $1 million around my age, it's good. But $1 million back in the 70s, that's like $3 million today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
probably more.
Well, yeah, because you could buy listen, my father bought a house before he went away on one of the longest bids he ever had to do. He bought a two family house with a basement apartment, 2-car garage, backyard, for $30,000. We only had to put $3,000 down.
I wish.
Okay, so well, that's what I'm trying to say. So now that house is going for what, 500,000-600,000 now? Okay.
Yeah, easy.
So anyways, he bought that, and that's what I'm trying to say. So $1 million. Think about what that would have did for you in the '70s. So I always heard my father when he would hit the number. Sometimes he'd come home and if he like for $1,000, and $1,000 was a lot of money back then too. He'd give my mother like $200. He gave me like $20.
Yeah.
But I saved up $30. I was a kid. What was I going to spend it on?
Right.
It didn't have any meaning to me. I threw it in a drawer. So one day I just put it all together. And $30 in singles is about, when you folded it over, it's like,
Yeah.
because like all wise guys, we all do the same thing.
You put the small bills on the outside.
Yeah.
You put the hundreds on the inside.
So this is like how we fold it all over. We have our things here, so we all do that. Now, a lot of guys use a red rubber band. I don't care. I use the green, red. I don't give a shit what it is, black. I don't care. But usually the red rubber band. I remember my father used to come home when he had all the money, when he used to sell the swag and all of this shit.
Uh-huh.
He used to put the money in the freezer, and he used to wrap it in foil. He had rubber bands around it, and he wrapped it in foil. I said, why red rubber bands? He said, well, it's because it's blood money. So then I said, but,
That's what he said?
yeah, he said it's blood money. And then he put it in the foils, like he had stacks of it, but he wrapped it in foil, put it in the freezer, because the feds would never think it was like money or cops would come to the house or whatever. They thought it would
they're not going to open up what you got wrapped up in the freezer.
They thought it would be like hamburger meat or something, whatever. And he says, I said, Dad, why are you putting in the money in the freezer? Now I'm only 7 years old, 5, 6 years old, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I said, why are you doing that, Dad? He says, the money's a little hot. I'm trying to cool it down. Yeah.
When did you fully understood what that meant? How long after that?
Oh,
you were only 7, so you
yeah.
didn't even get what he was talking
I
about.
didn't know. I laughed at him, but I didn't know what he was talking about. I realized that as I got older.
Yeah, right.
'cause
That's so funny.
Yeah. I have pictures of me when he was taking the numbers and he was doing his own numbers and stuff like that and taking bets and I have pictures of him early in the morning, leaning like this, going over the books and stuff like that. I'll see if I can bring those pictures in for you. So we're gonna start posting, right? I think we're gonna start posting pictures of these.
Yeah,
things that I'm
absolutely.
talking
We'll
about.
flash it on screen.
Yeah, we'll start flashing things. This way you guys can get you'll see me when in my younger days, and you'll see my father, of course. And back in those days too, like it was a thing where my father would come home or he'd go to the bakery early in the morning and they'd get all the, the pastries and the papers, like the, and the Shriadels, all the nice stuff. Like he'd come home in the morning. So when you get up in the morning, you had coffee, you had donuts,
Yeah.
It was like a thing where all of us guys did that, and I still do that, to this day. Except where I'm living now, there's no place like that except for Dunkin' Donuts. But anyway, but my father actually, like I said, he got started like that, and then of course my father started getting around the wise guys. And then he started dealing drugs. Back in those days,
Was it for the wise guys?
Yeah.
For the bananas?
It wasn't the Bonannos. He wasn't actually with anybody. He was kind of like an associate, but not with one family. Because he was hanging around a guy like Rudy Pippolo. Rudy Pippolo was a captain. I think he was with the. Was he with the Lucchese family or the Gambino family? I forget exactly which. I'm sure somebody will probably.
What was his name?
Pippolo. Rudy.
Rudy Pippolo.
We used to call him Uncle Rudy. See how fast I forget with the PTSD? Now, Uncle Rudy, I used to call him Uncle Rudy. Now, Rudy used to live on Teeman Avenue in the Bronx. I used to go to his house when I was a little kid with my father and everything there. And Rudy was a rough guy, real. And it was funny how years later on, and I think Dominic had mentioned, it's such a small kind of circle in a way, But Rudy had poodle, he had German shepherds. I mean, he gave me a $50 bill back in those days. And so he said, "Hey, go, Here's something. It was the 4th of July. My father says to me, he says,
Yeah, I think you.
yeah, I
told me
might have
that.
mentioned that. Yeah, and he says, my father says, don't forget, give half to your sister. I said, yeah, sure, Dad. Yeah, okay.
What's she gonna spend it on?
Yeah, exactly. I never gave nothing to my.
Dumb girl stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I was like 12 years old. You know what 12 years old was? 13 years old? Forget about it. So, so my father was that kind of way, and he started doing his drugs and everything, and my father was capable of taking care of business. Matter of fact, years later on, there was a guy, Alex Ciccone. I don't know if I mentioned the name in the past, but Alex Ciccone was, he had legitimate papers. He was crazy. Later on, my father wound up killing him because he came to the house. He bothered us. He was long overdue for to get whacked. He was legitimate crazy. He had actually real crazy papers that he used to carry. He was
Wow.
mentally ill. His parents were nice people. They used to own Siccone's up in West End of New Rochelle. They used to make the homemade lemon Italian ices. Oh, forget about it. I've never tasted any lemon Italian ice like that. Okay, and his parents were nice people, but sometimes your offspring, you don't know what's going to happen. My father supposedly wound up whacking him, and I kind of knew how it went down. I'm not going to say the guy who actually drove him there. But Alex Ciccone was not scared after, he got shot and everything, and then he got run over. My father ran him over too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he didn't like him after that. And Alex was a tough guy. I mean, there's no denying that. Everybody in the West End, all my friends wanted to know, who killed him and stuff like that. But meanwhile, I knew, and I never said nothing to them, But yeah, my father, that's some of the stories. And in this book that I was going to say, with the chin, he had to kill a guy, Vic Matoro, because the wise guys knew he was, cooperating with the government, which, they had suspicion, but they I don't know if they knew 100% for sure, but they called him down. My father had to drive him there and everything, and my father was like the last guy seen with him with somebody else, and I think that guy's still alive. I don't want to say his name. And then, of course, the next day they found him hanging in his garage.
Jeez.
And of course, they ruled it as a suicide, but it wasn't a suicide. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a suicide. And they were going to arrest my father on that murder, and that's why he ran away, and that's why he was on the lam. Even though that I think I told everybody before that the FBI did come to my father's house and said we got to get rid of JB. Now, I'm thinking that that's where it was. That's the link. If everybody wanted to know why I thought that my father went on the lam, was because maybe, and I don't know why they thought this, but listen, some guys just want to tie up loose ends. And some guys, of course, in that kind of life, you don't want to trust anybody. You don't want to believe anybody's going to flip or anything on you. Well, anyway, they probably were going to try to get my father on that murder, and then maybe the wise guys thought that he was going to flip. And that's why, to me, and I never said this to the FBI or anything, in my thinking, I'm thinking maybe they want to get rid of my father because they were afraid he was going to flip. Now, my father was a stand-up guy. He took it on the chin. He's been in prison a few times. I think the longest bit he did was the one he did in Lewisburg on the heroin charge. They called it what was I saying before? Back the old a tail end of the French Connection, which was a heroin thing, and most people were selling heroin back in those days. But anyways, that's why I want to answer that question. Is about a lot of people thought like, well, why'd you think the father flipped, did you believe the feds? That's the reason why I believed the feds, because I put two to two together in my mind, and that's how I came up with this could be right. And plus, like I said, I didn't have resources. You think I was going to go to the wise guys and said, who killed my father?
You can't start asking questions like that.
And if you guys listen to my friend Dominic, okay, I never asked him any questions. And if I did, he would have been starting to get suspicious. I never asked Dominic one question. I never asked any wise guy I was around one question. And
but I feel like you could have asked Dominic specifically because of how close you guys were, and it's your dad. It's
You're
not
right.
like you're asking about somebody else.
That's
some
true.
random Joe Schmo. Dom, what happened to my dad? Between man to man.
And to be honest with you, to this day, I still haven't asked him. But I think I'm going to have to.
You think he knows?
Dominic was very well known. He known a lot of things. People talk to him. and he just very well might.
Maybe he'll be able to at least say, "Well, I don't know for sure, but I heard this."
Well, that's what I'm saying,
You know?
and I think I don't know if Dominic wanted to tell me. Maybe he didn't want to hurt me. Maybe he does know and didn't want to hurt me, or maybe I
Maybe
don't
just
know.
waiting for you to ask him.
Maybe he is waiting for me to ask him.
Yeah.
To this day, I'm still haven't asked him, but I think we're gonna. And Dominic is the type of guy where I would take it to the grave what he says. I know that he would tell me the truth.
Yeah, for sure.
Because now that he's even out of that life, I think his heart is bigger than what it was now. We've talked about it before. Dominic, you couldn't show any emotions and feelings in that life. But even though I seen Dominic with certain things in that life, like when I seen him with his daughter, oh my God, I would, if I had a child, I wish I could be a father like Dominic was. I never seen anybody so tough and mean like Dominic could be, and then so loving and
Yeah.
caring for his own daughter.
Wow.
I could, well, I'm lying. I'm sorry. I saw Rudy Pippolo be more caring about his dogs than he was anybody in his life.
His dogs.
Oh my God, forget about you. He loved those dogs. You couldn't touch them. And those dogs loved him too. Oh my God. But that's a dog. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, but that's why I knew Dominic had a heart all that time.
Yeah.
And I seen that side of him, even when he was in that life, but he would never, if anybody was in the street or anybody else, they would never know it. They would never know that he had a heart because he was the real thing.
Yeah.
But that's why now that he's out of that life, I know he would tell me the truth.
Yeah. You guys
I
are
know
both
he would.
removed from it. Now
Yes.
you guys are, been out of there 20 years out of life.
I'm going to ask him one of these days, but I'm going to ask him that face to face. And I should have asked him when I was with him, but I just was so happy to see him for the first time in 18 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that might
was
be a
just-
second or third time hanging out, back reunited kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, because something. It's a sensitive situation. It's a touchy situation.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put him on the spot like that either.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't. I don't want to put him on the spot like that.
I hear you.
So, but anyways, I want to just hope this was open some of the books up about my father. He had about anyway. Just so for the record, for most of the viewers out there, from what I did on what they call a FOIA, which is the Freedom of Information Act. My father had about four bodies under his belt that we know of.
Wow.
Now, there was other things that he had done, and I don't say so much, you know what I'm saying? But he was the real deal, my father. And he had a heart, too. I mean, he did, too. He had a caring heart, my father, too. But he could never show that out in the street.
Yeah.
And there was a few guys out there that... my father was crazy, and there was some guy up there that wanted to have a fight with my father. And let me tell you something. Like I always said on this show, and I'll always say it in person too, I am not the toughest guy. I had friends of mine that were tough. I had my friend, he was my friend Charlie Buono was tough, of course. My friend Raymond Barreras was tough. Lenny Monteleone was tough. Mike Donato was real tough. These guys that I hung around with, tough guys. Louis Galello was a real tough guy. His father was a real tough guy. I mean, so I knew a lot of guys that were, that I myself would definitely not want to fuck around with. I mean, if I had no choice, of course I'm going to defend myself. But my father was the real deal, and I miss him, But I want to say thank you to the audience. I want to thank you guys out there for asking these questions about my father. And I will come up with any other stories about wise guys that I know or that I knew. Some stories that I know, I won't fabricate anything. Like if somebody asked me a story about Sammy the Bull, of course I heard about Sammy, but I don't know him.
What family was he with?
He was with John. It was the Gambino family. He was with
Gambino.
John Gotti. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and don't forget, Sammy was the underboss, and Sammy, he got to know a lot of people like Michael Francis. I don't know him personally. I've heard stories about him. Now, the only person that can answer these kind of stories is themselves. You
Right.
know? I mean, I can only know about what they did to Michael, of course, just by his videos and what he says. But from what I see that like people say, I mean, a lot of these people got the raw deal. You know what I'm saying?
I had a question about your
Sure.
dad. How long did it take him to become a made man, and also what rank was he? Was he soldier or captain?
My father was a soldier. It took him he didn't get made till he was like in his probably like when he was 50. My father died when he was 54 years old. Okay.
Wow, that's tragic.
He just got straightened out maybe when he was maybe 50, maybe, or 51. He had asked me, come to me and asked me, and I think that story's in the book as well. He said to me, look, he says, they proposed me. They want to.
He told you when it happened?
He told me when they proposed him for
Yeah.
them, and he says, that's a lot of responsibility, I mean, because now, when you're an associate is one thing, and there is a lot of responsibility with that too, but it's 1,000 times more when you're a soldier.
Yeah.
So I said, you ready for that? You can't turn it down. You can't say no. And so I said, well, you do.
What would happen if you said no? They'd kill you, or like what happens?
They just probably just not
Cut
bother
ties with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Probably at least that's the the least of it. Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be a great honor that they're offering you.
Well, it's a show of it's a show that they respect you, that they trust you. And they're inviting you. And look, who out there in the world doesn't want to be welcomed by somebody?
Yeah.
There's always guys that they try to pick up a girl, and if a girl turns them down, it's like, oh man, they go home, they might sulk for 2 or 3 days. A girl, the same thing too. If she likes a guy and the guy doesn't want nothing to do with her, she'll be like, oh, I'm not good enough, or what am I, no good? Or everybody wants to be accepted. You know what I mean? In this life, everybody. So when somebody like that, proposes you, and I believe it was Barney who told my father that, they took a walk on the BQE at 2:00 in the morning. Now the BQE, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. Barney's the type of guy. He's very high up in the Genovese crime family. He was one of the youngest.
What's his full name?
Barney Belamo.
Barney Belamo.
Yeah. And but I think his first name is a different name, but they call him Barney. But Barney, they picked up my father. They stopped on the side of the road. They started walking because at 2:00 in the morning, you could see if the FBI is following you or anything. Barney was he's sharp. You know what I mean?
I gotcha.
Yeah, it was like Dominic. Dominic knew the feds were following him, and he did a thing where he went into the body shop. He came out. He made Ace, Anthony Ace Aiello.
Yeah.
He made Ace put on the same jacket that he was wearing, the same hat, and he jumped into Dominic's car.
Oh my God.
And then he started driving away, and then they started following him, and then Dominic went out the other way in another car.
The old bait and switch.
Oh God! And, this is what I liked about it. It was almost like you're playing cops and robbers in the street. You know what I mean? But you do the stuff in real life. That's how the FBI is not as smart as you think. Oh, of course they got technology. They can tap you. They can try to scare other people into cooperating and shit like that. But they're not that smart. You know what I'm saying? The guys I was around was smart, like Dominic and Barney and them. They know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So. But anyways, I just wanted to thank. Did you have any other questions? Or?
That was my only question, guys. This will be our makeup episode
Yes.
since we missed last Monday. We both had, as Joe said in the beginning of the episode, we both had things going on, and we apologize for that. But I'll be uploading this. If you're seeing this should be uploaded on Friday, and then we'll resume our normal schedule this coming Monday.
Yeah.
Look forward to that. We're going to do a Q&A with Joe answering some viewer comments and emails that were sent in. So thanks so much for watching today, guys. If you liked the video, feel free to drop a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. We appreciate it. Feel free to check out our Patreon where you can see exclusive stories from Joe and content that you won't find anywhere else. And we appreciate it, and thanks.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Have a good day.